My philosophy, I'm always very big and always pushing the aspect of the gathering the material, recording original sounds. I'm not as much a tech guy as I am sort of oral, listening to all this material and recording new material and all that. What is your philosophy like that? Where do you,
I think I fall somewhere in the middle. I'm I'm
yeah,
I'm I'm technical enough to know sort of how to do what I want to do. I see some of these, younger people who are, wizards at programming, and I
yeah,
look at like Justin Webster, who, is writing things like Matchbox and Conformalizer, and I'm just like, I can't. My head hurts even thinking about being able to assign that.
yeah, yeah,
But I know my way on Pro Tools and computers and microphones and recording gear and all that.
sure,
I think, it's important to understand enough technology that it doesn't get in your way. I think, I think that's enough for most people. That's always been my philosophy, is you have to at least know how to run the software you're using so that it basically doesn't hinder you. You know, I don't think you don't need to know every single nuanced thing. I mean, some of the greatest editors I could think of, I wouldn't tell you that they're incredibly technically, capable. But I think you certainly, we interact with technology in this job constantly. You have to have some aptitude for it, I think. So I think I've always felt somewhere in the middle, kind of a right brain, left brain kind of person. I think I can sort of navigate both of those, and I enjoy both of those. I enjoy the purely creative side, and I do enjoy the technical side,
yeah.
of the advances that are coming out and things like that. So I'm lucky to have a career that sort of feeds both of those halves of my mind, I think. So from the beginning, I was recording, and certainly on Lord of the Rings, which was, pretty early in my career, we did a lot of recording. We had a year on that film, so we had a lot of time, especially early on, while we were waiting for the picture to be put together and visual effects come in. So we did a lot of recording expeditions on that, and that was a lot of fun. And a lot of us would go basically out into the field and record a lot of things together. And so that I have a lot of fond memories of that, recording nature and these amazing tunnels built into the mountainside in Wellington that were built for World War II that had this ridiculous echo, and we would go in there constantly and record some things just to get worldizing things in there. So yeah, I mean, we really didn't have a library for that movie. We had to sort of piece it together and record as much as we could.
A film on your resume that I'd love to talk about is John Carter,
Oh yeah.
which is just I wish it did better than it did, because I thought it was just such an undertaking and so big and epic and fun. But
Yeah,
yeah, could you
that was
talk
a
a bit about?
well, yeah, that
Yeah.
was a film that I wasn't originally really attached to in any way. Ren Kleiss hired me to work on a temp mix with him. Just the
Mhm.
two of us sort of cranked out this temp mix in 3 or 4 weeks, and I think they originally wanted Ren, but because his schedules didn't allow it, I helped out on the temp mix. And to Ren's credit, it was a really wonderful thing that he did. He went to them and said, "You should just hire him to do it." I didn't have a lot of supervising credits at the time. I
Mm,
only had probably one or two before that, honestly.
wow.
And Ren really went to bat for me, when I'll always be grateful for that. And so I met Andrew Stanton and Jim Morris from Pixar, and we had dinner. And I think they were a little apprehensive, and rightly so. This was a huge movie, and but we talked for a while, and we seemed to all hit it off. And so yeah, it was a huge job, and it was a long film. I was on that film for, I think, almost 14 months from beginning to end.
Wow. On your resume, I see Finding Dory,
Finding
which
Dory,
you're
yeah, that
coming
was.
you're coming off of Nemo. Um, but how is it to work in a? I mean, it's an animated film. It's fanciful. You don't have to stick to too much. I mean, there is a certain amount of reality in it that you want to convey, but it's still an
Sure.
animated, fanciful film. But it's all underwater.
Yeah.
That's an interesting discipline. Could you talk about your work on that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when some of the early discussions, we had to sort of stop and think, even just about the dialogue. Like, we had to kind of look at Nemo again and go, do we try to treat anything, or do we like do anything with the reverb, or do we, how do we, how much underwater sound do you want to hear before it becomes just too much? And of course there was, we did fish movement for everybody, the Foley type sounds of fish swimming. And, what you realize pretty quickly is once you get all the pieces together, is your ear will only sort of take so much of that. I
Sure.
remember Andrew sort of going, okay, enough with the fish stuff at various times. And
Well, once you establish it, you can sort of take
yeah,
it back a
exactly.
certain amount.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but it was, I remember I went back to Nemo, and I got a lot of the original, files that Gary had made, and Shannon Mills had recorded some things, and we used that, and we went and recorded a lot of new stuff too, and we built basically character tracks for each character of their movement, that we figured out their pacing. So when Dory's swimming versus Nemo, and all these different characters. And then we had new characters like Hank the octopus, which was a lot of fun to sort of do. Some of that was John and Shelley Roden in it, and some of that was me. And so there's always new stuff to do. But yeah, animated films, I did like 4 in a row there, I think. And that was fun. I hadn't really done a lot of animated work up until that point. Anyway, I had this idea. There's a Slack channel of field recordists, a bunch of us interested in recording over there, and they had been running through these crowdsources for a couple of years now, at least. So I joined a couple of those, and then I thought I'd love to do one of basically people, who aren't able to travel outside of their home, just recording the ambiences of basically where they live. So whether it be their backyard or their neighborhood or their city, whatever they're able to get out and record. And we'll basically compile all of these sounds, and we'll basically, anybody who contributes gets a copy of the library. And then at the end, we'll basically make the library available for purchase or for donation, as a way to raise money for some charities. So we haven't picked what charity yet, but basically if you make a donation of a certain amount of money, you'll get a copy of the library in exchange for that. So I think it's a great sort of way for the sound community to try and do something positive, especially in these times, and great way, especially for people who are just starting out in their career. I mean, this is we think will generate, upwards of 1,000 to 2,000 sounds, from around the world, ambiences. And, by contributing 5 sounds, basically you get a copy of all of these sounds to work with and add to your library. So